It is January, 40,000 years ago, and you are standing in what will eventually be called Europe. There is no coat. There is no door. There is no building on this entire planet with heat inside it, because there are no buildings. It is 30 below. And here's the part that should genuinely frighten you. Winter is not hunting you. Winter is not chasing you. Winter is doing arithmetic. Every hour, it sends you a bill, and it takes payment in body heat, and you are carrying about 3 days of savings. Now, you already think you know how this ends. Fire, furs, caves. That is what everybody says, and it is wrong. Not because those things did not exist, because they are the boring third of the story, and they are the third that gets you killed if it is all you have. The thing that actually emptied out human camps in winter was not the cold. And the most dangerous mistake you could make in a European winter was not failing to find food. It was finding food, eating plenty of it, going to sleep with a full stomach, and starving to death anyway. That is a real thing. It has a name, it has a body count, and it is waiting about 5 minutes from now. Start with the bill, because everything else in this video is a way of paying it. Your body runs at 37 degrees. It is not negotiable, and there is no setting on you for later. To hold that number, you burn calories, constantly, whether or not you found anything to eat today. And the colder the air, the faster you burn them. A modern human, sitting in a warm room, burns roughly 2,000 calories a day just existing. Put that same body outside in a real winter, working, and it can climb toward 5,000. So winter does not just make food harder to find, it doubles the amount you need, both at once. That is the squeeze, and it is the whole problem. And when you cannot pay, the shutdown is faster and stupider than people imagine. You do not heroically freeze solid. You get slow. Your core drops 2 degrees and your hands stop doing fine work, so you cannot tie or strike a spark or fasten anything. Drop another 2 and your judgment goes, and that is the cruel part, because the organ making your survival decisions is the organ being disabled. People in the late stages of hypothermia take their clothes off. It is documented, it is common, it is called paradoxical undressing, and it happens because the body gives up and floods the skin with blood, and you feel a wave of warmth that is a lie. Cold does not kill you. Cold talks you into helping. So picture what winter actually deletes from your world, item by item. The berries, the fruit, the green shoots, the roots you could dig, now locked in ground gone hard as stone, the insects, the eggs, the birds who left, the fish under ice, the frogs buried, the deer thin and far away and moving, the daylight down to 8 hours, then 7, the dry ground, the dry wood, everything soft, everything easy, everything a body can simply pick up and eat, gone, in about 6 weeks, all of it, together. That is the environment. Now stay alive in it for 5 months. Good moment to ask you something, and I want a real answer in the comments, not a brave one. What is the longest you have ever actually been cold? Not stepped outside, got chilly, went back in. Cold with no exit, no car, no door, no thermostat, no hot shower waiting at the end of it. Most people alive today have never had that experience, not for a single hour of their lives. If you have, tell me how long it took before you stopped being able to think about anything else. That number is the most honest thing in this comment section. Right? Fire. Obviously, fire. But almost everybody thinks about it wrong, and the wrong way is the modern way. You think of fire as an event, something you make when you want it. You gather wood, you strike the thing, you get fire. That is a camping mindset, and in a real winter it kills you, because starting a fire from nothing with cold hands, in wind, with frozen wood, is one of the hardest things a human can attempt, and your hands are already failing. Ancient humans did not think about fire as an event. They thought about it the way you think about electricity. Not something you make, something that is on. So they never let it go out. Not overnight, not while moving camp, not for years. There are hearts in the European record that burned so long, the ground beneath them is cooked into a different substance. And when the group walked, the fire walked with them, carried as embers packed into slow-burning fungus or bark inside a container, smoldering, fed, for hours or days. Which means somebody was carrying it. Which means somebody's job that day was fire, not hunting, not building. Sitting with it, shielding it, feeding it. Before anyone was a toolmaker, somebody was a firekeeper. And in winter, that person was carrying the whole group's life in a box. But here is what nobody tells you about fire, and you know it already if you have ever sat at one outdoors in winter. A fire heats a sphere about 2 meters across. Your front cooks while your back freezes. It does not warm a landscape, and it cannot warm you while you sleep unless somebody is awake feeding it. Fire is not the answer to winter. It is a tool for three jobs. It keeps the dark and the animals off. It dries you, which matters more than heat, and it cooks, because the real war of winter is not fought against temperature at all. It is fought over calories, and cooking is how you win more of them out of the same dead animal. So follow the arithmetic, because this is where it gets brutal. Plants are gone, which leaves meat, and meat in winter is available. The animals are still out there. Mammoth, reindeer, horse, bison. Cold even helps, because a carcass in December does not rot. So the picture in your head is fine, probably. Hunters go out, bring back an animal, everybody eats. Everybody makes it to spring. And that picture is wrong in a way that killed people, killed explorers, killed trained men with modern equipment, and is still killing people today. Because in winter, the animals are starving too. By late winter, every animal in that landscape has burned through its own fat. A deer in February is not the deer of September. It is muscle stretched over bone, because it has been paying its own bill all winter in the same currency you are. And here is the fact this whole video is built around. A human being cannot live on lean meat, not for a shortage of calories, for a stranger reason. Your liver has a hard ceiling on how much protein it can process, and it sits somewhere around a third of your energy intake. Push past it, and the machinery that turns protein into fuel backs up. Ammonia and urea build up faster than you can clear them. So you eat. You eat until you are full. You eat more than your body needs. And you are still starving because your liver cannot cache it. It is called protein poisoning, and the older name is better because it is what the people who died of it called it. Rabbit starvation. Rabbit, because rabbit is the leanest thing in the woods, and you can eat rabbit all day and get thinner while you do it. And the symptoms are the tell, because they are not the symptoms of eating something bad. They are the symptoms of hunger, a gnawing craving. Then diarrhea, which takes water and salt out of you. Then weakness. Then a headache that will not go. Then a hunger so total that men describe being unable to think about anything else while meat sat in front of them, uneaten, because their body had stopped accepting it. Then, in weeks, death, with food in camp. And this is not folklore. Arctic explorers ran into it repeatedly and wrote it down, confused because it made no sense to them. Men on generous rations of fresh meat, wasting. Vilhjalmur Stephenson, who lived with the Inuit for years and then let doctors put him on an all-meat diet in a New York hospital to prove a point, was explicit. Give him lean meat and he was sick within days. Give him the fat back and it cleared in a day or two. He learned that the way you learn anything real in the Arctic, from people who already knew. Ask the Inuit what part of the animal matters and you will not hear steak, which flips the whole question upside down. Because if lean meat cannot keep you alive, then every image you have of ancient winter is wrong. They were not hunting for meat. Meat is the packaging. They were hunting for fat. Fat is the only thing out there that pays the bill, and in February, it is the rarest substance in the world. So the real question is not how did they stay warm. It is where, in a frozen dead landscape full of starving skinny animals, do you find fat? If that just rearranged something in your head, that is the entire job of this channel. We take one ordinary thing, being cold, being hungry, and go down far enough that it stops being ordinary. Subscribe, because the next layers are the ones that answer the title, and one of them is a parasite that told us when humans invented clothes. Right? Where's the fat? Inside. All of it. The fat is inside, in the last places the animal gives it up, and ancient humans knew the map by heart. The marrow in the long bones. The brain, which is more than half fat, which is why skulls turn up cracked open in a very particular way. The tongue. The fat behind the eyes. The kidneys wrapped in it. The fat around the intestines. The hump of a bison. The tail. The feet. Every part you would throw away, they took first. Every part you would grill, they treated as the leftovers. And then they did something that still impresses me. When the marrow is gone, there is still fat left, locked in the spongy bone at the ends, in quantities too small to pick out. So they smashed the bones to fragments, put them in water, and boiled them for hours. The grease floats. You skim it, let it set, and you have a cake of pure fat that keeps for months. It is called bone grease rendering, and we find it in the shape of the shattered bone and the heat-cracked stones used to boil the water. Think about what that takes. Containers, heated rock, knowing that a thing you cannot see is in there, and hours of labor on a freezing afternoon for a few thousand calories, you are certain enough are worth it. Which brings us to the thing that turns winter from an enemy into an ally. Winter is a freezer. The hardest problem with a mammoth is not killing it. It is that it is 4 tons of meat and it is rotting from the moment it stops. In summer, you have 2 days. In deep winter, you have months. The cold that is trying to kill you is also the only preservation technology on the planet, and it is free, and it is everywhere. There are sites with caches, meat stored in pits dug into permafrost, weighted, protected. Ancient humans were not just surviving winter, they were using it. And a cache is not a small thing. A cache is a human in October doing work for a human in February. It is labor you will not benefit from for months, spent on a hunger you cannot currently feel, based on a confident belief about a future you cannot see. Animals cache, but a squirrel is running a program. It buries nuts whether or not it needs them, and it cannot explain itself. A human digging a pit in October and covering it with stone is doing something categorically different. They are modeling a version of themselves who does not exist yet and taking care of them. Quick one, and commit before I tell you. When did human beings invent clothing? Not fur thrown over a shoulder. Actual fitted clothing, cut and sewn to the body. Put a number in the comments right now. Best guess? No looking it up. I will tell you in about 90 seconds, and the how is the part that will get you, because the evidence is not a piece of clothing. Nothing that old survives. The evidence is alive, it is on people today, and it has been keeping time for 170,000 years. Because here is the problem with the fur cliche. A hide draped over you is nearly useless in a real winter, and anyone who has worn a blanket outside already knows why. It is not insulation that keeps you alive. It is trapped still air, held against the skin, sealed at the edges. A loose hide lets air move, and moving air is exactly the thing taking your heat. You do not need fur. You need a seal. You need the sleeve to close at the wrist, the hood to close at the face, the boot to close at the ankle. That is not a material problem. It is an engineering problem. But before the tool, the date, and this is my favorite piece of evidence in all of paleoanthropology, you have head lice. Well, humanity does. They live in the hair on your scalp, and they have been with our lineage forever. But there is a second animal, the body louse. It looks almost identical. It is a different species. And the body louse does not live on the body. It cannot. It lives in clothing. It grips fabric, it lays its eggs in seams, and it only visits skin to feed, which means the body louse cannot possibly be older than clothes. It has nowhere to exist without them. It is an animal whose entire habitat is a human invention. So geneticists did the obvious beautiful thing. They sequenced both, measured how far the body louse has drifted from the head louse, and ran the molecular clock backwards to find when the two split. When did a group of lice move off the scalp into a new environment and stop breeding with the ones they left behind? The estimates cluster around 170,000 years ago. That is the answer. Humans have been wearing clothing for at least that long, and we know because a parasite moved house and left a receipt in its DNA. We did not find the coat. We found the thing that lived in it. And then, around 40,000 years ago, the needle. Not the awl, which just punches a hole. The eyed needle, with a hole drilled through a sliver of bone so it can pull a thread. It is tiny. It is unremarkable to look at. And it is one of the most consequential objects our species has ever made, because it is a difference between covering yourself and being sealed. Fitted sleeves, closed seams, hoods, mittens, socks, layers, an inner against the skin, an outer against the wind, tents that hold, boots that keep snow out, a parka, a bag. All of it arrives behind one hole in one bone. If a sewing needle, being a piece of survival technology, is not something you had considered before, hit like. It genuinely is the only thing that tells the algorithm to put this in front of somebody else who thinks ancient winter was solved by throwing a bear skin on. 2 layers left, and the next one is about a species that lost. Because here's where it turns sharp. Neanderthals lived in Ice Age Europe for hundreds of thousands of years. They were built for it, and I mean that physically. Short limbs, barrel chest, wide body. That is not an accident. It is a shape that minimizes the surface you lose heat through, and the cold has pushed animals toward it over and over. Neanderthals were not shivering primitives clinging on. They were the local experts. They had fire, tools, hides, and they had been handling European winters since long before our species walked in. And in their entire archaeological record, we have found essentially no-eyed needles. Now, I want to be honest, because this is where documentaries usually overstate it. That does not mean Neanderthals froze to death for want of a sewing kit. They lasted through glacial cycles that would end most of us, and they clearly wore something. Absence of evidence is not evidence of absence, and bone needles are small and fragile. But the pattern is hard to look away from. We show up with needles and awls and layered tailored clothing, and we walk into the subarctic, places Neanderthals in 300,000 years never settled. They solved the cold with their bodies. We solved it with objects, and objects can be improved in a generation. A body takes 100,000 years. Then there is the roof, and forget caves. Caves are rare, usually damp, often occupied by something with teeth, and never where you need them. The reason you picture ancient humans in caves is that caves are where things survive to be found, so caves are where we look, so caves are what we find. Most people built, and on the treeless steppe, with no wood for hundreds of kilometers, they built out of the only structural material there was, mammoth. At Mežerich, in Ukraine, there are dwellings made from the bones of dozens of mammoths. Skulls set as the foundation ring, tusks arched into the doorway, jawbones stacked in interlocking herringbone patterns, hides over the top, hearths inside. 20,000 years old, 20 tons of bone in a single structure. And here is the detail I cannot get past. The bones are sorted, not piled, sorted. The right bone in the right place doing the right job, because a jawbone stacks and a skull does not, and somebody knew that. That is architecture. Somebody stood on a frozen plain with no trees, looked at a pile of the largest animal in the world, and saw a house. And stepped back, because every other large animal out there had already solved winter, and each one picked a lane. The bear sleeps through it. The ground squirrel drops its body temperature near freezing and switches off. The bird leaves, thousands of kilometers. The reindeer walks to where the food still is. The fox turns white. The hare grows a new coat. The frog lets itself freeze solid and thaws in spring. Sleep, leave, or change your body. 3 options. Every animal took one of them. Humans took none of the 3. We do not hibernate. We did not grow a winter coat. We do not even have a decent one to start with. We are a bald, tropical ape with sweat glands built for Africa, standing in a blizzard, and we did not leave. That is the part that should stop you. We walked north into it, into Central Europe, into Siberia, into the Arctic Circle, into places where winter is not a season, it is the default condition. We did not adapt to winter. We built our way in. So let us have the argument properly. Pick a side. Team Soft says you, personally, would be dead in a week. Not from cold, from having never once done a single thing for yourself, from soft hands and a body that has never missed a meal it did not choose to miss, and that everything you call resilience is a thermostat. Team Same says that is self-flattery in reverse, that they were not a different animal, they were you with training and a group, and you would be cold and miserable and competent inside a month because the body underneath is identical and still knows how. One of those is closer to true. Pick, say why, and go and argue. I will pin the best from each side. And Team Same has one thing badly in its favor, which is the layer we have not covered. None of this is done alone. The lone survivor in the snow is a modern fantasy, and it is the one part of the picture that is pure fiction. A group of people under one hide is a single warm object, which is why the person on the outside is cold, and everybody knows it, and everybody rotates. Somebody holds the fire. Somebody holds the child in the middle. And the knowledge, which trees burn slow, which bones hold grease, where the cache is, none of that gets reinvented. It gets told, which is why an old person in an Ice Age camp was not a burden. An old person is the only copy of the last 50 winters. They have seen the bad one, the year the herd came late, and they know what was done about it. When a group lost its elders, it did not just lose people, it lost the manual. And the next hard winter, it did not know something it used to know. Caring for people who could no longer hunt was not sentiment. It was the group keeping its library warm. So here is where it lands, and it is not the answer the title implies. Ask how ancient humans survived winter, and the honest reply is that they did not, particularly. Winter survived them. It killed them constantly, in numbers, every year. What they did was more interesting. Every single thing we have talked about, the cash, the rendered grease, the sewn coat, the sorted bones, the fire carried in a box, the knowledge in an old woman's head is the same move. It is a human in the present doing work for a human in the future. Winter is the only predator that tells you exactly when it is coming and exactly what it will do. And an animal that can be told that and act on it in October has just invented the future. That is the trade. A tropical ape walked into the cold, and the cold handed it a bill it could only pay with foresight. So foresight is what it grew. Storage, planning, specialized jobs, teaching, sharing under scarcity, engineering. Every one of those is a winter technology, and you are still running all of them. Your calendar is a cache. Your savings account is a pit of meat in the permafrost. Your fridge is a January you keep in the kitchen. The whole shape of how you think about tomorrow was hammered into your ancestors by 5 months of cold, over and over, until an animal that could not think ahead simply did not have descendants. So back to you, standing there, 30 below, 3 days of savings, the bill arriving every hour. Now you know what you actually had. Not fur, not a cave. You had a fire somebody else was keeping alive. A coat somebody sewed shut at the wrist. A cake of grease boiled out of shattered bone in October. A pit of frozen meat under a stone. A house of sorted mammoth. And 30 people who all knew your name and none of whom would let you sleep on the outside 2 nights running. That is how you survive the winter. You do not out-tough it. You out-plan it together. Tell me in the comments which one of those you would lose first. Like it, subscribe, and go argue about whether you would last a week.